The ground shook so hard that my teeth rattled, and I was already running before my mind caught up with what had happened. My shuttle was on fire behind me, black smoke curling into a sky that was the wrong color, a deep violet instead of blue. I had exactly 40 seconds to grab my pack before the fuel cell blew, and I made it out with 3 seconds to spare, thrown flat into the mud by the blast wave. For a long moment, I just lay there, ears ringing, staring up at 2 moons that had no business existing. My name is Daniel Cole, and 6 hours ago, I had been a cargo pilot on a routine supply run. Now I was alone on a planet that was not on any chart I had ever flown, with a dead engine, a cracked helmet, and no idea if anyone even knew I was missing yet. I forced myself up and checked my suit. Air was fine, water reserves, low, calm, dead. I had maybe 2 days of rations and no shelter except the smoking wreck behind me. That was when I heard it. A sound like a creaking door mixed with a growl, coming from the tree line. I froze. Every survival instinct told me to run, but my legs did not move, because what stepped out of the shadows was not something my brain wanted to accept. It was small, about the size of a large dog, with scales that shifted color like oil on water, deep blues sliding into burnt orange. Its wings were too small for its body, still growing, folded tight against its back, and its eyes were gold, wide, and terrified. A dragon, a baby dragon, staring at me like I was the monster. We stood there for a full minute, neither of us moving, both of us clearly deciding whether the other was a threat. Then it did something I did not expect. It sat down, right there in the mud, like its legs had simply given out from exhaustion, and it made a small sound that I can only describe as a whimper. I did not know if it understood language, but I talked anyway, because staying quiet felt worse. I told it my name. I told it I was not going to hurt it. My translator, a small device clipped to my collar, was still working despite the crash, and it began picking up fragments of sound from the creature and turning them into broken words in my ear. Alone. Cold. Hungry. 3 words, spoken by a creature that should not have existed, and somehow they hit me harder than the crash had. I spent that first night at a careful distance from her, close enough to watch, far enough to feel safe. By morning she had crept closer, curling up near the warmth of my emergency heater without asking. I let her stay. I did not know what else to do, and honestly, I did not want to send her away. The next 2 days were a strange kind of survival. I rationed my food, and she brought me things from the jungle, fruit with thick red skin that turned out to be sweet once you cracked it open, and thin green stalks full of water that tasted faintly of mint. She was smarter than any animal had a right to be. She watched how I used my tools and mimicked the motions with her claws until she managed to crack a fruit on her own, then looked up at me with what I swear was pride. On the 3rd day, my comm crackled once and died again, a tease that made my chest ache with false hope. That was the same day everything changed between us. I was checking the wreck for salvageable parts when I heard branches snapping behind me, fast and heavy. I turned and saw her sprinting toward me, wings flapping uselessly, eyes wide with panic, and behind her, crashing through the undergrowth, was something enormous. It was built like a wolf the size of a truck, gray hide, 6 legs, jaws that could close around a grown man without slowing down. It was not hunting me, it was hunting her. I did not think. I grabbed a length of scorched metal pipe from the wreck and put myself between the creature and the dragon, screaming at the top of my lungs, waving the pipe like a madman. For one terrifying second, the beast paused, sizing me up, deciding if I was worth the trouble. Then it lunged. I swung the pipe as hard as I could and caught it across the side of its skull. The impact rattled my arms to the shoulder, but it worked. The creature yelped, stumbled sideways, and crashed into a tree hard enough to shake loose a rain of leaves. It scrambled up, shook its head, and to my absolute relief, turned and bolted back into the jungle, deciding that whatever I was not worth losing an eye over. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the pipe. When I turned around, she was pressed against my leg, trembling, her small head buried against my knee. I sat down right there in the dirt and just held her, because there was nothing else to do, and because some part of me had already decided, without asking permission from logic, that I was not going to let anything happen to her. That evening, sitting by the fire, she looked up at me with those gold eyes and asked a question through the translator that stopped my heart for a second. "Will you pretend to be my dad, just for today?" I asked her, as gently as I could, where her real parents were. She did not answer with words. She just lowered her head and stared into the fire, her small claws digging into the dirt, and I understood. Something had happened to her family, something bad enough that she could not or would not talk about it, and she had been alone in this jungle long enough to learn that asking for help rarely worked out. So I told her yes. Just for today, I would be whatever she needed me to be. We spent that day differently than any before it. I taught her how to use my multi-tool to open the tough fruit shells herself. She taught me which parts of the jungle floor were safe to walk on, and which hid sinkholes that dropped into black water below. I told her about Earth, about oceans that stretched farther than she could imagine, about snow, about cities lit up at night like fallen stars. She listened to every word with her whole body leaning into my side, her small wings twitching with excitement every time I described something new. By the time the sun set, she had stopped flinching every time I moved too fast. She had started curling up against me without hesitation, and she had given me a new name, one that did not translate as father, but as something closer to the one who stays. That night, while she slept curled against my leg, my comm came back to life. Not a flicker this time, a real signal, steady and strong, a supply convoy, thrown off course by the same storm that had downed my shuttle, had picked up my beacon 3 days late, and was finally close enough to receive a response. I should have felt nothing but relief. Instead, I looked down at the small sleeping shape beside me and felt something twist painfully in my chest. Rescue meant leaving, and leaving meant leaving her, alone again, in a jungle that had already tried to kill her once that week. I made my choice before I even finished thinking it through. When she woke to the sound of my voice on the comm, she went very still, watching me with wide eyes, clearly expecting the worst. I turned to her and told her that just for today had turned into something longer, if she wanted it. I did not know if she understood every word, but she understood the tone, because she pressed her small snout into my palm and made a sound that was nothing like the whimper from before. The convoy landed 2 hours later in a scorched clearing, half a mile from the wreck. The team that stepped out was cautious, weapons ready, until they saw me standing there, with a baby dragon pressed against my leg like she had been born there. Their leader, a calm woman named Alice Whitmore, lowered her rifle slowly and asked exactly one question. "Is she dangerous?" I told her the truth, only to the things that try to hurt the people she loves. There was a long pause, then Alice sighed, rubbed her forehead, and said that command was not going to like this, but she supposed a rescue report could include one very unusual dependent. Nobody had a protocol for evacuating an alien creature that had apparently adopted a human, but nobody on that crew was willing to leave her behind either, not after they heard what she had done, sitting still and brave in the face of a predator twice her size just to warn me. As we boarded the shuttle, she pressed herself against my side, watching the jungle disappear below us through the small window, gold eyes wide with something between fear and wonder. I put a hand on her back and told her it was okay, that where we were going, nothing would ever hunt her again. She did not fully believe me yet. I could feel it in the way her claws gripped the seat. But she stayed close, and she did not look away from me, not once, during the entire climb back into the black of space. I had come to that planet expecting a routine supply run and a quiet shore leave. I left it with a daughter who breathed warmth instead of fire, who called me the one who stays, and who had taught me, in 3 short days, that family is not always about blood or biology. Sometimes it is about who shows up, and who chooses, again and again, to stay.